Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to our channel and thanks for logging on. Today we're discussing the Bell and Ross instrument BR01-96-S. You can see this big date in stainless steel on our website, purchase it there. And if you enjoy these videos, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also click on the card in the upper right hand corner of the screen at any time to see our full listing for this watch with additional accessories included, high resolution images, and naturally complete pricing details for this Bell and Ross big date. Now you can see on my wrist, 6 1/3 inches, 16 centimeters in circumference. The BR01 instrument case is best described as a 46mm square, a perfect square on the wrist. Now 46 is a beastly size, and conventionally my 16cm circumference wrist would not be able to wear a 46mm watch, but a Bell & Ross wears different than anything else because it is a perfect square. It's also quite thin. You'll note that the watch is only 11.5mm thick with a stepped bezel above the case flank and even a little bit of a beveled lip to the case. It's actually easy to get a dress cuff or a tight sleeve to ramp up and over this watch. The absolute measurement, extremity to extremity, so lug to lug, is 55.5mm, but again, it doesn't really wear like that simply because the lugs are so short cropped, they thrust downward, and there's absolutely no constraint on the strap. You'll note that Bell & Ross straps have one consistent design philosophy throughout the modern era, so the instrument watch of 2005 to present. These are full width straps. They nicely close the gap to the flank of the case so it looks very integrated and all of a piece, but because it's also a full width strap on a broad and heavy watch, it prevents the watch from torquing side to side, as can happen when the strap is excessively narrow. Now you'll also note that the strap is held in place by screws, and that's nice to see because on a watch this large and this heavy, spring bars just aren't the optimal solution. This is a little bit more expensive to manufacture, takes a little bit more time to swap the strap, but it's just going to be that much more secure on your wrist. I like to see this on this type of watch. Now you'll also note that in addition to having strong character lines and full width construction, the strap also has relief channels underneath to release sweat, grit, moisture that may accumulate underneath the strap on a hot day. So not only does this make you more comfortable, but the evacuated section makes the strap more pliant, softer, and more flexible. It's a very comfortable strap to wear, and it's matched to a perfect alternately polished and satin finished faceted trapezoidal pin buckle for easy on-the-fly adjustment. Now Bell & Ross is pretty explicit about what's in the case. That middle digit, the 96 or 93 or 92 or 94, always describes the caliber variant that's inside the watch. Before I jump into what's inside, let's talk about what's outside. You can see that the case finish is actually surprisingly complex for a fairly simple watch concept. You can see on the flanks it's satin finished, and vertically so. You can see that there's a beautiful polished bevel about the flanks of the case, and that the tops of the case, and I'm going to try to capture this grain if I can, but there's actually a circular grain that runs around the entirety of the top of the case. I don't know if I'm capturing it. I think you can see it to best effect right here on this corner right now, but it's almost as though a circular brushed metallic finish were running through these discontinuous parts of the case around the bezel. And you can see that the bezel itself has been alternately polished and brushed. Again, surprisingly complex for a very simple watch. There's another feature I want to address because the question comes up often with Bell & Ross watches, but why aren't the screws aligned? For instance, people use the Royal Oak and the Royal Oak Offshore as a comparison. Those screws always appear to be aligned, and the difference is that these are actually screws. What you see on the Royal Oak and the Offshore are actually counter-threaded bolts. The real screws holding those in are actually underneath the screws. They're inside the case. So what you're looking here are actual assembly screws. They thread in, and they thread in the way screws do, relatively randomly, so the slots don't necessarily align. This is how they come from the factory, and again, when you're looking at screws, that's how they thread in. When you're looking at counter-threaded bolts that are held in by the real retainers inside the case, then they can do things that are aesthetically pleasing, like align the slots. Here, you're looking at actual assembly components, and if you look carefully, you'll see them on the dial as well. Bell & Ross from the beginning stole a small page from F.P. Journe by including screws, 4 of them in this case, on the dials of its instrument watches. It's a little bit offbeat, but it works well because this is also the aesthetic that you see on the inspiration for this watch, namely analog flight deck instruments from 20th century aircraft. Now you can see this watch features everything big. Big dial in matte black, big hands broadsword style and segmented, big indices and big Arabic numerals, as well as a big date. This is an easy watch to read at a glance. Even the date has been brought to the forefront of convenience. Now, like I said, inside the case, 96 is your telltale. Underneath the screwed-in case back, which also I should say, endows the watch with 100-meter water resistance. There is an ETA 2896, 21 joules, bidirectional winding, 42-hour power reserve with hacking or stop seconds and a quick set for the date. It's a big date derivative of the classic ultra-thin ETA 2892 automatic caliber. The 96, 2896, all is in correspondence. Now, it does feature a screw-down crown. Like I mentioned, the watch has exceptional hermeticity for a pilot-style watch. Nevertheless, I often like to say, this is good for the pilot of a seaplane. Whether on land, sky, or in the water, this watch is perfectly suited. The ultimate utilitarian aesthetic, this is one of the few modern tool watches that dared to break with the pioneering looks of Blancpain and Rolex in the sports watch segment. See it, fall in love with it, and take it home on our website.